So one thing that everyone always talks about with content is that create great content. Sure. But how do you actually understand if that content resonates with the people you want to get in front of? It's episode 94 of the 1004 show, and we are with Alex Young out of the Columbus, Ohio. He is the man behind The Powerful Mind. You guys can check them out at thepowerfulmind.com. And we talk about just that. How do you understand what resonates with those that you're looking to get in front of? Also, something I really enjoy about Alex, and it's pretty crazy, is he does a daily vlog, which is video blog, for those of you who didn't know, but he does a backflip every time. That's incredible. I can't even do one in the pool, probably. But whatever, it's episode 94 with Alex Young. Let's go. La 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 la. Alex, what's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. Just chilling here over in my orange office.
Why orange? Is that your favorite color?
No, it was this way before I came here, and I don't feel like changing it.
Painting is a pain.
Yeah.
No one ever says, "Oh, I loved painting today."
Yeah.
I guess at least painting walls. Maybe if they're making art, that's a different story. How old are you?
I am 28.
So when you meet someone new, how do you describe yourself? What do you say you are? What do you say that you do?
Before I used to say I was like a professional project maker because I do a lot of different things, and I've run different companies, I've held different jobs, and they're always in like entirely different fields. I used to say that I was an entrepreneur, but I feel like when you only have like 1 to 5 employees and it's very small scale, I'm like, I don't really feel like an entrepreneur, more like I'm doing a hobby that I make money with and pay people through. So I like to say that I'm a blogger, I'm a podcast host, I'm a professional who likes to connect people together. On the day-to-day, I do insurance consulting and I do business consulting and host a podcast. But I guess the short of it would be I'm a podcast host and a consultant.
Very cool. How long did it take for you to kind of change the words from entrepreneur to a podcaster or consultant?
A year, probably 2 years.
And that was just
there are many.
That was through like trial and error, talking with people, or?
No, actually, it was just through self-discovery. I really don't try and go like, how are people going to conceive me? How are they going to picture me when I try and introduce who I am? It's more like, what am I comfortable with and what am I actually doing? I try to keep it like as real and as like, if it feels right for me, like if I'm happy with what I'm putting out there, then that's what I try to go with. And that just took, a little bit of self-discovery, about a year or two, trying different things and then settling on what I'm doing right now.
Very cool. Let's go back to the time machine. What was the first piece of content that you ever produced?
Blog articles.
And what was it?
So let me take this like way back. I used to enjoy writing. I used to do fiction writing as like a hobby. I wanted to be a writer when I grew up.
Do you not enjoy writing now?
I enjoy it to an extent. I like what comes out of writing.
Okay.
after I'm done. The process when I'm in flow, it's great. But when I'm not in flow, it's like just like grinding your nails on a concrete brick. It's not like the most pleasurable thing. It's kind of difficult to put words out there sometimes. But yeah, first piece of content that I ever created was just writing, taking ideas that I had in my mind and then trying to make it into something that other people can consume was something that was fascinating, and I enjoyed the process and that's like the result that came out of it.
How did you get people in front of your content so that they could be aware of it?
Initially, just making it and then shoving it in their face, putting it somewhere where people like. I think Facebook was pretty new back then, and it was like a college-only thing. And so if you posted something on there, like everybody, all your friends would see it, they comment on it. I had I think I had a Blogger or a Zanga back then, and so I would publish there, and you get feedback that way. That was like how I did it initially.
A Blogger. I remember that. I too also have I had a blogging or a blogger account. I think I talked about gambling, which was kind of interesting. So I used to, for whatever reason, I used to go to Las Vegas and bet on sports and stuff like that, and I would create stupid content around that. Man, how things have changed. Crazy. So what do you learn from the whole blogging, creating content that is still the same today?
A lot of it's you can't try to create content that you think other people will want to hear. And this is something that translates to a lot of what I do, actually. You have to create content that you are happy with, that resonates within yourself, and then find an audience that also resonates with you. Like, don't create what you think somebody else wants to hear, because then, you'll, first of all, you can never know what they want to hear. So you just create something that you're okay with, and then find an audience who resonates with you.
How do you find that audience?
Different ways. Like a lot of it's just through asking and talking to people. I've realized, like you ask for feedback, or you go and you present your content to somebody in person. Like I realize a lot of actually one-to-one communication, whether it's in person or over the phone. But that kind of communication helps you to actually find out where your audience hangs out. If you don't ask, then you can't really know. Like there are sometimes people will find you online. That's more rare, or it used to be more rare. I guess it's not that hard these days. You write an article on LinkedIn and then people will comment on it. But yeah, it's like just finding ways to get that in front of people, whether that's directly asking them one-on-one or finding a person who distributes it with their audience, and then you get feedback that way.
When you're asking them these questions, what are you asking them?
Initially, it's like, can you please read this and then give me your thoughts? What do you think about this? Like, what resonates with you? Is there anything in there that you want to hear more about?
I mean, just asking that question is so important. What resonates with them? I like that. And if someone who consumes it doesn't like it, how do you take their feedback if you don't think they're actually your customer or the person that's supposed to be?
Depends on what the feedback is and what they don't like about it. Because, I mean, writing is a process of retrospection. Like you write something that you have an idea on, and by nature of putting that idea out there, you then have to re-look at it yourself. And when you're getting feedback on that, you have to take another look at it. You're hearing from another perspective and you're getting another opinion. If what they like is just like a personal preference, like if it's just subjective, then, you take it with a grain of salt. But if it's something that you can actually work on, like, hey, this is an area of improvement for me, and then you can move on that. And if you're just not sure, you can ask somebody else and, get some more opinions.
So as you're creating content, you've also now started this podcast as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. What are kind of the elements that are necessary in a blog post?
In a blog post, depends on what kind of content you're writing. Like, I don't really... So the content that I try to write, the style that I try to base my thing off of is things that resonate with me. So like I read a lot of Colin Wright. He's very, I think I would call his content very intellectual. And I also read The Minimalist. Their content's very brief. Like they have some long form, but it's very concise. And so I've been trying to, I guess the style of what I write has been trying to more self-discovery for myself, but also just, it's like sorry, I'm like ranting right now, but it's like essay format that I tend to gravitate toward. Like a narrative essay, I'll have a thought, or like it's almost like a journal entry, and I'll just write about a subject, but it needs to have a beginning, introduction, like a subject that leads into the direction that you're going to take that article. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you live in Columbus, Ohio. You went to the Ohio State University. What did you study there?
I studied communication.
Okay. And how long until after school? Were you creating content in school?
No.
Okay.
Not
so
really.
when did you start creating content in this whole thing?
Probably the content that I'm working on right now, I'd say I started that consistently probably a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years after I graduated. And that was because I got a corporate job, and I was just working while I was there. I wasn't creating anything, but I was consuming a lot while I was there.
I think the internet and content is kind of like when we learned growing up about compound interest with financing, right? The best time to start was like the day you were born, right? Because it's going to compound and grow and grow. So if you're thinking about starting content, the best day was to start, yesterday, because the more everything's better and it will compound in the future. So what have you learned kind of knowing, and if you believe that whole kind of compound effect, what have you learned with just getting it out there, and why that's so important.
If you don't start, you'll never know what you could possibly make. Like you don't know what direction things will end up. Like right when I first started my blog, it was not called The Powerful Mind. The Powerful Mind did not exist, and I had no idea it would turn into what it is today. I just had an idea like I should start writing something because I have these ideas. I don't really know what I'm going to do with them, but if I write them down and share them, then maybe one day it'll turn into something that someone else can use. And so I've learned the most important step is just to start and to not wait until you feel like you not don't wait until you're satisfied with your product necessarily. Just put it out there and it'll improve as you go along. Because if you're always waiting to that point when you feel ready, like you'll never be ready, and then you'll
So
never get to that point.
yeah, so perfection doesn't matter, right? It's just getting it out there, and I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. That perfection is something. I can't put this out there for people to see it, but to me, it's and I think you would agree with this is. If you can't learn if you don't get it in front of someone, right? You can't figure out what other people want to see, what new ideas that you come up with if you're waiting for something to be perfect. Have you ever struggled with kind of the perfection piece of it, or do you just get it out there?
I think more so when it came to starting a business initially, which is like the worst place you can worry about perfection, in all honesty. Like when it came to creating content, I just figured it's never going to be good enough. I should just put it out there and I don't really care what happens afterwards. Um, but yeah, when it came to like creating a product or a business, that was a big issue initially.
What's the focus of your content?
Right now, it's well, for the Powerful Mind branding, it's all around mindset and things that I'm thinking about, things that I'm contemplating, and different ideas that guests on my show talk about. I do a daily vlog, and that content I'm still figuring out like the main focus of it. The idea behind creating all of this content is to try and create a personal brand around me, like around Alex Young as a brand, rather than just segments of my life and like compartmentalizing everything. I wanted to create one unified image of what people can get when they hear my name.
When you use the word mindset, what do you mean by that?
Mindset, just like your outlook on life, your approach to things. Like how do you approach a situation? What is your internal driving force whenever something comes in front of you?
So what's your why? The Simon Sinek. What's your why?
Um, my why. This is something that I had thought about because there were two answers, but the one that I tend to gravitate towards is add value. And it doesn't mean just add value like just generically. I mean like how do I add value to myself and those around me in some way, shape, or form?
You talk about building a brand around you. Where'd you kind of get that concept and what all is entailed into it?
From the people that I look up to, that I would consider mentors or who actually have mentored me, the ones that I would like to emulate, like that I find inspiring, they have a brand name, but also like what attracted me to them is not this ephemeral brand. It was them, the person behind it. And I realized that, I could start any number of companies or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But what the consistent thread through all of that is me. So when people hear my name or they see me or my name attached to some piece of work, what does that mean to them? And if there is no content, there is no brand around that, then, it's you start something and it won't really carry much weight. But if you have a brand, then, you can add a lot more to whatever you start.
Love it. What is Alex Young best in the world at?
What am I best in the world at? Oh, tenacity. I am very, very tenacious, and that if I start something, I won't give up. I think Will Smith said a quote like, "You can run longer than me, you can run faster than me, you can run harder, but I will die before you beat me on that treadmill." I was like, I feel I can resonate with that. Like, there's as far as like skill in particular, like I'm not really good at anything, but I can be very tenacious at whatever I set my mind to.
Give me an example of a tenacious time for you and how you got through it.
Tenacious time. How do you mean?
Yeah, so like if you're kind of just like what you were saying. So what was like a rough patch that you've gone through and you needed to be tenacious to get through it?
I would say anytime I start a new venture, there are ups and downs. I think There was one period. This was like early on in my entrepreneurial career. I was doing traveling, like just going to trade shows, buying product, and then going other places around the country and selling the product. So I was working out of my car, living out of my car, working 13-hour days with no breaks. So that was there are good times there where you can make lots of money in a day, but there are also times when you might go do a gig and you might lose 10 grand and you might not talk to anyone this whole for 2 weeks because like there's no customers to give you to support what you're doing. And if
So you've lost $10,000 in a day before?
I would say in it's like a 2 week gig period, like where you spend money on product, you go somewhere, and then you just don't make any of your money back. So you're in the red to start out, and you got to get your way back to the black. So yeah, and in that way, yeah, I've lost lost money in a rather short period of time.
From a vlogging perspective, what all is involved in that? Is it heavily edited? Are you editing it? What's the content there? Is it still around mindset?
So when it comes to vlogging, that part came because a lot of my guests that I had on my show, they're all like, they're doing video. They're saying, why aren't you doing video? And I never had an answer for them. So literally, I had Calvin Wayman on my show one day, and then like he came to Columbus once, and then we just got dinner, and he's like, you should just jump, just do it. Like, there's no reason to not start creating this video content. That's where everyone is. And so on a whim, I started making videos, like if I'm being frank, without direction. I hadn't really done video before in my life and just wanted to start making something. And the content began to evolve from just random everyday content. Like there is still that, but I'm trying now to incorporate more of what guests talk about my podcast, talking about the mindset things that are shared, and then crafting a story around what I do to create that brand image. So it's getting more directed. I would say it still has that random content in there of just what am I doing today, but it's getting a little more focused.
People are going to call me crazy because I just learned about this, but within like the last 6 weeks, I just learned about Casey Neistat. Are you familiar with him?
Oh man, yeah.
So that dude is a pretty good photographer too, and I like his storytelling and his style. And I don't remember how I learned about him. Maybe through First We Feast. I don't know if you've watched that show on Hot Ones.
I have not. I forget how I found him as well. I've never watched a vlog before I started vlogging, and then he was the first one that I found. So I was gonna say my vlogs have been compared to Casey Neistat's in that I've tried to base my editing style off of what he did during his daily vlog period. But keep in mind, like I don't have camera equipment, and I'm not Casey. Like I've never done video work before. So
what equipment do you have?
I have it right here actually. If this will be on video,
yeah.
I have this Osmo and I have an iPhone, and that's what I use to make my videos. I also use a drone sometimes just to throw in some like transitional content. But
you use the earbuds as the sound, the audio. What do you use for audio?
Honestly, I use the onboard camera for the phone. Some people don't know. When they're outside and there's a lot of wind, you can tell for sure because I don't have like a wind buffer. I've actually thought of getting external microphones, but then I didn't really see the value in it, at least not yet. Now, when I'm doing actual productions, I've begun doing some video work for other people. And when I do that, yeah, I'll bring microphones and I'll bring other lavalier mics and things like that. But for my daily vlog, I just use the phone, and that seems to get by.
And I think it's so important because what you're saying is what so many people are afraid of, and what that is I need perfection. It's like, no, what do you have in your pocket, right? You have a phone, right, which is going to get you to like 90%. The key is what you're producing going to be able to get in front of other people? Are they going to like it? Are you going to be able to build this community? And so I appreciate that you have very minimal equipment to do that and are just doing it. So can people learn about this at thepowerfulmind.com? That's your website. Is that where they can see the vlogging as well?
The vlogging actually is not over there. I'm trying to, so I'll be creating another website actually with my less professional content, because it's very, very unfiltered content.
Got it. So where would people find? Where would people find the vlog then?
They can go to bit.ly/thepowerfulvlog. I made that because I don't actually have a YouTube URL. And I didn't feel like I should put it at thepowerfulmind.com. Not yet at least.
Why not?
Primarily because I feel like the content that I put on thepowerfulmind.com is more refined, whereas the vlog content is not. So I feel like when I get my video editing and the storytelling ability to a certain point, then I'll probably start shifting and putting things on there. But it's still pretty raw.
Very interesting. Have you seen the? So, do you live a minimalistic life?
I like to think so.
Have you seen that documentary?
I have. I've actually had Ryan and Nicodemus on the podcast. He
Interesting.
was so it's a little bit of history. He was actually one of my first mentors before I got into business, and this is also before the documentary and some of their other books.
Very cool. So, how do you create relationships with influencers, though, or people that are deemed as experts?
How do you create those relationships?
Yes.
Well, a lot of what I do is just by reaching out in some way, whether it's on social media. Instagram was actually a really big first one for me to get connected with people who had followings. It's just messaging people. There's a guy named Calvin Wayman. He said that you need to do things that are unscalable. So that for him on Instagram, that means if someone follows you or likes you or you want to reach them, you send them a video message. Every single person, like a not a copied video message, like you hit record every time you want to reach out to them. So I did a lot of that on Facebook. You do audio messages on Instagram, and then other than that, just emailing and messaging people, doing a lot of networking. I wouldn't say there's any like direct method, but you always, whenever you do reach out, you want to see how you can add value to that person's situation. How can you help them with what they're doing, and then that'll help open the door.
I would say, though, it does look like there's a method to your madness, and it's reaching out one-to-one to people, right? And so I think what Calvin says and what you just relate his messages, it is doing things that are unscalable. Do things that aren't going to be to the masses, right? And so if you want an action to happen, you're probably going to have to reach out to that person. And so, whether it's me reaching out to you and how we met, because we had we were both on a different podcast together, and I was watching yours, and I said, I like this. I'm going to reach out to him and just say, hey, then we got on a call. Like, that's how you build relationships. And so I think these people that are trying to build relationships that are, I don't know if fake's the right word, but not genuine, it doesn't work that way, right? And so, like, you and I now have this connection that happened because I introduced myself, and hopefully will last forever. And I think it's something that is so often missing from people, and they don't understand that this is a long game instead of just trying to win one game.
Yeah, it's actually a lot like sales. People get the wrong idea when you hear sales. Like they think that it means you have to go out there and just sell a person, but business is built on relationships. It happens passively through authentic relationships that you build with people. I mean, there are certain, I call it old school mentality, where they're just like very straightforward. They don't really care to build a relationship. They just want to do numbers, and that's that might have worked before, but I think the long-lasting, strong relationships and strong business partnerships that happen, they happen because they make sense, and you don't know if it will or won't if you don't build that authentic relationship first. So you have to approach every situation as though you were just trying to meet the person, get to know them, and add value to their situation. And if it makes sense, then you might work together there a year later, 2 years, 5 years later. I mean, that's happened for me, where I'll meet someone and then I won't, it wouldn't make sense to do any business together. I won't have any referrals. They won't have any referrals. But a year, 2 years later, with what we're developing, what we're building, it might make sense down the line.
What's your favorite?
But you would never know.
Exactly. You wouldn't know that, right? There's a person who's actually a very good friend now. And I've known him 7 years now. And just in the last 6 months is the first time I ever made money off of him. But I've had this great relationship, or at least directly, right? He's probably influenced other people to buy some of our stuff and stuff like that. But from him specifically, 7 years. That's crazy. Is there a piece of content that's like your favorite that you've ever produced?
That I've ever produced? Yesterday's podcast, maybe. I had an interview with a guy. He's the CEO of NBlock, and it was my first time actually. So my studio is my computer and my microphone. I either record online like we're doing right now, or I just meet someone in person. And he had a studio set up in his office with just 2 microphones, and then they had tripods in there. I could set up my camera, and then this is just me geeking out over it. Like it came out so well. and our conversation was just really on point. I was resonating very well with what he was saying, and off the top of my head, that comes to mind of
Well, usually,
favorite content that I produce.
usually things that are recent can help with that. And it's hard though with podcast and audio shows and video shows. I think everyone would like to do it in person next to that person so you can have the best optimal audio. But it's something that hopefully will continue to get stronger. I mean, think about 10 years ago, we didn't have this technology to be able to do this.
Oh yeah.
And so you got to think in 10 years, who knows what's going to be possible. How many podcasts have you done at this point?
I have, shoot, I'm pretty sure I've uploaded episode 66 this week. But I've recorded probably about 80 episodes now. And it's a weekly podcast, so it's once per week.
So I'm going on your show soon. So people will be 3 or 4 months in the can before that it gets released? Roughly?
Likely more like maybe like month and a half, 2 months right now is where I'm at. Could be 3 months, but I need to look at my schedule to verify that.
Is that something that people have ever worried about, questioned with you, or been like, oh, I don't want to wait that long, or anything like that?
Yeah. And it's not so there are some guests who I've had on, they're like, hey, I need this to go up next week. That's usually fine. If it's not fine, I'll tell them like, we can schedule it later and then I can put it out sooner to the release, but I can't do that right now. Usually within 4 weeks, I can reach out to the other guests and say, hey, we got to move this around a little bit. Is that all right? And then they're fine with it. It's not a big deal.
And what's the reasoning behind why they need it out sooner?
Some of the guests I've had on, they had a program launching within a month. They want to have the episode out to coincide with that. That's usually the case.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. What is your favorite kind of social media tool to use?
Social media tool to use. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know how much I actually like social media, even though I use it. I would say Facebook because I can schedule posts on there and it makes it easier. Yeah. And yeah, probably have to go with that for ease of use.
I just interviewed Laura Roeder from Meet Edgar. She'll be on a few episodes after you. And that tool, if you've never used it, it's really cool to use as well. It basically is a scheduling system for all your social needs. And for those of you listening, she's coming up soon. That'll be episode 100 of the 1004 Show. We're talking with Alex Young of The Powerful Mind. You guys can learn about them and him at thepowerfulmind.com. It's episode 94. Alex, you in 10 years, what do you want to be?
Speaking a lot more. I actually would like to do a lot more speaking engagements, and just hopefully I will have multiple books out by then. I want to have one book out this year, so 10 years. Would like to have a couple of bestsellers out. Would love to do a lot more speaking and just have a lot more of a positive impact on the communities that I interact with, both in person and online.
So how do you change that then? How do you improve that? How do you start getting more speaking gigs?
A lot of networking, actually. I've found one of my friends has this thing he calls I think it's called target marketing, where you have a target that you're aiming for, but very often you hit around it and in the peripheries, and that's where you get the majority of the direction that you're trying to go in. So for me, it involves a lot of just meeting people and having a conversation and not really knowing where it's going to go. But that has resulted in different podcast interviews. It's resulted in a few different speaking engagements. And while those are on the back burner of something I would like to make happen, I didn't go there with that intention.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally true. You never know where something's going to go. And, you've probably seen the picture of, people think life is like this or owning a business like this, but it's really a roller coaster or whatever. And I think creating new relationships with people is just that too. Is you could be targeting the right people and talk with them, but ultimately you don't know, maybe you can get more out of them. Maybe you meet someone who's, connected with someone that you just didn't know, and that can take you, super deep. So tell me about a time that's been really tough for you and how you got through it.
I want to say that, is this for business or just anything?
Anything. I think whether it's business or life, I mean, it's how you get through the challenges.
All right. Well, here's a little bit of a story, and I'll try to be concise with it. But so, end of 20, see, this is end of 2016. Um, got out of a 3-year relationship, and it was not my choice, and that was like kind of hit me like a truck. Like I was not expecting it at all. I was just launching my podcast at the time called The Powerful Mind, and I was hit with this, I was like just facing depression. I was just not a happy person. And I had company that I was building at the time decided to pull out of the market. Like I was building a branch for a multi-state company here. So I was the head of the Ohio chapter, and they were decided to pull out of the market. So I was then without any income basically. So long-term girlfriend leaves, job leaves, and then my car gets totaled. So I'm like starting 2017 like completely with like, fresh. I have nothing right now. And that was a really hard point because I was wrapped up in my identity. Like, I was in a relationship. I was part of a couple. I was an entrepreneur. I was building a business. I had employees. And then I was in this position where I was I could have been homeless. I was unemployed, didn't have any transportation, and I was now single. So that was really hard. And when you're about to launch a podcast about mindset, it's kind of ironic because it's like I really don't feel like talking about how to overcome this right now because life kind of sucks. It's not easy. And the way that I got through that, if I'm being honest, is just I did not isolate myself. I told people, within my, circle that I could talk to about the situation, how I was feeling. Really, I wasn't trying to put on any airs. I felt like there's no point in trying to put up a front with my situation right now because there's nothing that I can gain, nothing that I can lose, or nothing to gain from putting up a front, only more isolation. So just being very authentic and trying to relate as authentically as I could with people, being open with myself, and just putting one foot in front of the other towards a new goal. I just set new goals, set up new priorities and things that I could focus on, and began to walk forward with my why.
Well, it's so important, it's what we do when we're down that will really lead us to that next big step. And, it sounds like you were, many months ago in a really treacherous situation, and did get through it. Knowing that it's 2018 now, and I don't know if you're in a new relationship or anything like that, but how do you make sure that reflection or reflecting back on a time like that you don't make that decision, or you improve upon how you were kind of not communicating with a lot of people, and how do you make sure that from that bad time you don't make that mistake again, so that you can improve?
I think being authentically yourself in all situations is crucial. Like there is no benefit that comes from putting up a front with someone, whether it's professionally or otherwise. I think I got wrapped up a lot in my identity as an entrepreneur, as a guy who's like in charge, like as a boss, and that was when that got taken away. There was nothing there. But if you just authentically relate with people, know who you are, and then you present that to people, I think that there is no way that you can lose that sense of identity, because you always have it regardless of your external circumstance. And that's something that helps now. Even if I do something new now and it doesn't work out, like it's fine, because I can always move forward with my core of who I am.
I love that. I really appreciate that. What is something about you that most people don't know about?
I used to be a professional magician back in the day.
Can you do that that thumb thing? Like what was?
Oh, so I did mentalism. It was like a mind reading thing, which is ironic. I say that's super ironic right now because my memory these days is like horrendous. But before, like I could go into a room and like memorize like 20 new things, like people's names and like what they do and everything in like 10 seconds. And now it's like I have a hard time remembering like what I did this morning. So that was like back in the day. It's a fact that I try not to disclose, because as soon as I say it, they're like, do a trick. And I'm like, I would love to if I could.
I kind of just asked you to do a trick too. Sorry.
No, no, you're fine. Like the thumb trick actually is it's a pretty big one.
I have no idea how to do it. What's next for you immediately?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Um, well, the company that I'm working on right now with one of my friends, actually the former podcast guest who I'm now working with, working on pivoting a little bit to be rather than just consulting on the companies like insurance. We both have such extensive experience, and oftentimes when I'm meeting with a client, insurance is like 15 minutes, and then the next hour is strategy and consulting for their company. And so we're pivoting a little bit to offer more of a full service package to our clients, and maybe like changing the branding of our company a little bit to be more in that direction. So that's happening.
What's a question that most people ask you that I have not?
That people ask me that you have not asked me. That's an interesting question because I feel like I don't get asked a lot of questions these days. Like people will watch, but I don't get asked too many things that you haven't asked me already.
Okay. Fair answer. If someone is interested in kind of thinking about, mindset and mindfulness and really being in their moment, what are some top tips, whether that you kind of create as your content or your past guests have provided to you, that they can do to be more in the moment?
To be more in the moment, take time for yourself. Like it's very easy to get lost in busy work, and actually busy is what I think Joshua Fields Milburn from The Minimalist says is like one of the most evil four-letter words in the English language is busy, because it's very easy to get lost in that when you're not actually doing anything. Like there's a lot of busy work, but I think that takes away from being very present with yourself. So just take some time to stop whatever you're doing and just either meditate, just to breathe, and to think, just reflect, think about what's going on right now, where you are, and where you want to go.